didn't get the memo about the right arm, but we'll get it out there.
I really didn't understand why you all were out of uniform, because I thought we had made it clear. But, thank you, Dean Guthrie. It was very kind of you with your remarks, and it's it's a very, very special moment for me and a deep, deep honor. And I do confess I've had opportunities that have put me in an honorable situation before, but never as important for me as when I have a very personal friend who I can introduce, and that's certainly the case with Taleb Rifai. We've been friends for many, many years. I've worked with him when I was ambassador to Jordan in many capacities, and so the introduction you're going to get tonight is a very sincere one from the heart. And before I go on with that, I want to say how wonderful it is to have with us tonight the ambassador from the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, Dr. Ali. And the two do share some interesting backgrounds together. They started in academia as professors, as they were telling me. I returned to, or went to academia the other direction. They're now in public service where I was. And both served as a Minister of Tourism in the Jordanian government. Well, I know that you have an extensive biography of Dr. Rifai in your brochure, but that isn't going to stop me from highlighting some of the very important things that he's done in his life. As we all know, he is now the Secretary General of the UN World Tourism Organization, and what better person can you imagine than someone who in fact was Minister of Tourism in Jordan. For any of you who know that country, even in a small way, you know how vitally important the touristic sites are and tourism in bringing and supporting the economy and the development of that country. And he and I have had many conversations over the years when incidents, not in Jordan, but in the region, impact so badly on something so important as tourism in Jordan, because people stop coming. And the infrastructures there, people's lives and occupations, as Dean Guthrie was talking about, are really interrelated in the success of the business. And even while he was a Minister of Tourism in Jordan, he was also, as you will see in the bio, chairman of the Executive Council of the World Tourism Organization. So he began a long time ago his familiarity with the WTO. He was Minister of Information. He was Minister of Planning and International Cooperation, and in that capacity in the Jordanian government, that's the minister who is involved in all the international agencies and the bilateral relationships that Jordan has with donors. So he's the one who's putting it together and trying to implement the planning and the programs that will develop the country of Jordan, and tourism, even then in that capacity, was something central to what he was doing. Now, that's a lot about what he's held in the way of positions. But let me tell you that this man is such a genuine human being, a person who really cares about people, who is so deeply, deeply committed to what he does. I can tell you he's been in jobs that didn't always give him the latitudes that he would have liked. Even though he would have had strong views about where he thought things should go, he always knew how to articulate that in a way that was bridging controversy, a reconciliator in issues, someone that you wanted to bring into a situation that had different opinions and different sides, because he knew how to bring about a compromise and a solution. So I cannot imagine anyone better than what he's doing today. I would tell you that those of us who've known and worked with him see him as a wonderful friend, a deep, deep, committed, as say, and dedicated individual to whatever he does, a man of very deep integrity. So I'm very, very pleased to introduce you to my friend, Dr. Taleb.
Skip, it's going to be quite a challenge to speak after you, I must say. I'm absolutely deeply touched and I'm not sure I deserve all the kind words that I heard from you, but thank you so much. A good friend. I also appreciate very much the comments done by Dean Guthrie. I think he's leading a great, great outfit in George Washington, and I'm very thankful for him being with us this evening. I'm also thankful for Ambassador Boran, companion of a lifetime, that you join me in this moment. But I'm most deeply grateful to the people that organized all of this. Kristen, you did a great job. You and your team, Larry, everybody here. But now I can refer to on first name basis. Thank you so much. But most importantly, to our wonderful, wonderful young women and men of GW, this wonderful school that I have the privilege and the honor to say that one of my daughters is one of your colleagues here. I'm so excited about this. To be speaking in a university where your son or daughter is a very special feeling. Someday you'll get to know that feeling. And I tell you something. They say that sometimes sons and daughters feel a bit nervous if they are speaking or presenting something in the presence of their parents or their loved ones. I'm going to have to confess, I feel a bit nervous speaking in the presence of my daughter. I don't know if that makes sense, but it does. It's great to be in Washington, and it's definitely a pleasure to be in George Washington University and speaking to you this evening. I want to express my very heartfelt appreciation to the opportunity to address you. UNWTO and George Washington University, particularly the Institute of International Tourism, have a long, long relationship. And let me start by recognizing the contribution that this university has done, not just to development of tourism in the USA, but beyond that, definitely beyond that in the international arena. You may not feel it because you are very much, and correctly so, preoccupied with what we are doing here at home base. But believe me, you have a great name abroad and the international scene, and George Washington University is one of the most respected and the most credible institutions, especially when it comes to the field that I feel very, very much comfortable referring to, which is travel and tourism. George Washington has been a pioneer in tourism management, education and research and technical assistance since 1972, since it's initiated its first tourism course at a graduate level. I'm particularly happy to join you here this evening on the 24th anniversary. Next year it will be 25, it will be a jubilee of a partnership between UNWTO and GW. Imagine, 24 years of working together. And we haven't yet started. We're still strong, and we're getting to more and more places. 24 years is long, 24 years is good, 24 years is solid, steady, and constant. And we intend to keep it that way and keep moving on. Our long history of cooperation, and I dare say also one of deep friendship and personal relationship, is one that we are capitalizing and building on. On May 20th in 1988, George Washington University and UNWTO created an International Institute for Tourism Studies. Many of us were not even there when this was created, but we're all benefiting from it and building on it. And since then we have been working together for many, many years in many, many areas. Between 2003 and 2005, George Washington University held what we call the UNWTO Educational and Science Council, which is a council that grouped together all the renowned, famous, important education and training institutions in tourism all over the world. Last March, only last March, GW was elected with the highest number of votes, over 60% of the votes for number one, to George Washington University, sharing the council affiliate members as vice chairman of UNWTO Council of Affiliate Members, and I'm looking forward for us working together, Kristen, on all of that. I am, and I hope you understand this, particularly grateful to a person that is not with us this evening. Don Hawkins had to be away for a personal reason, and I must not fail recognize his contribution when all of us were not here in establishing all what I'm talking about. Don Hawkins was there. He's still there with us, and he will continue to be with us, and I want to be very, very grateful to him for all of that. We are also here because many of you are joined with so many programs that this evening would have been completely full and occupied by going through them. But that's not what we're here about tonight. Tonight, I'd like to take you on a little journey. Life is a journey, and tourism is all about journeys. 24 years we're celebrating our relationship. I'd like to suggest that we look back at 24 years ago. Just 24, a hypothetical number here. Since we're talking about the 24 years, what has the travel and tourism industry done in these last 24 years? And it's an amazing, amazing story. I usually talk about the difference between tourism in 2010, 11 and 12, and that in 1950 or 1960, because that's where the real momentum started. But I will be quite happy to talk about only 24 years and not 50 or 60 years. Let's look at it. In 1988, international tourism, people crossing international borders, was 380 million people all over the world. That's a big number, 380 million. Today, in the end of 2011, it's 980 million, almost 3 times as much. 20 million short of 1 billion, which will be definitely reached in 2012. 1 billion travelers crossing international borders in 1 year. You add to that 4 to 4.2 billion travelers that make domestic trips in their own national boundaries every year. That's almost a trip per citizen of the world per year. Internationally, almost 1/7 of the world population is on the move. Now, why is this very important? It's important because we have evidence to make us believe that 50 years ago, more than 75% of the people of the world never traveled beyond a circle of 100-kilometer radius. They'd be born, they spend their life, and they would die in a circle of 100 kilometers, only 50, 60 years ago. This is a revolution. This is people defying all borders and wanting to move, to exercise their rights. It's become more of a human need and a human right to travel, to learn, to be stimulated, to relax, to enjoy, and to see the world. This is what tourism has come to be. Never before have so many people traveled, never before in history have so many people traveled to so many places. Few places in the planet today have escaped the curiosity of travelers. There is no place under the sun that is unreachable now. You name me any place and I'll take you there in 24 hours, 36 hours, you can be there. Every place is saying, come and visit me. This has never been the case before. And most of this travel has been from north to south. And by that I mean from those that have more means of expenditure to those that need to benefit from the travel and the energy that comes with it and the benefits that come with it. Today, at 1.3 trillion US dollars a year, strictly in tourism incomes. That's not including transport income or any other related income, but strictly expenditure within a country, 1.3 trillion US dollars every year. It is by far the largest transfer of voluntary funds from those that have it to those that don't. From those that are happy to spend it to those that are happy to receive it. There is no fund, there is no transfer of such benefits and distribution of wealth in the world that is bigger than that. This is what the travel and tourism industry is all about. So much has changed, so much has changed. In 1988, Europe occupied more than 65% of world tourism and international travel, inbound and outbound. The share of Asia, for example, at that year was no more than 12%. Today, in 24 years, since we're talking about 24 years anniversary, Asia has gone up to 22% of world share, and of course, Europe has gone down to 52% of world share. Everyone is benefiting. The cake has become bigger, but it has become more fairly distributed amongst many of the people of the world. So we've come a long way. The main thrust of my presentation today is to review with you what has made this impact and what is likely as a result to impact tourism and travel and tourism in the coming 20 years. This is very important because in each one of those elements, and I'm going to concentrate on 6 specific elements that shaped this change and are going to continue to shape the change for the coming 20 years, these are the elements that are probably going to be the backbone and the solid material for your research and for your in-depth studies when you go along in a more specialized way. So let me take a few minutes to share with you some of the major changes that shaped this travel and tourism industry in the last decades and propose as a result to look at 6 main areas. And I'll go through them in as quickly as possible. 1. Growth. It is a story of growth. It has been a story of growth, but not only growth, growth against all odds. Tourism has been able to withhold and withstand external shocks. My very good friend, Ambassador Skip Gnehm, referred to some very, very nice moments that we shared together. Many of them, Skip, were about how to come out of a crisis and into another crisis and with all that. You lived that with me. Travel and tourism is a story of continuous expansion, yet a story of resilience and recovery. Only in the last decades, if you just look with us and review what has happened, we started this decade that has just passed, the first in the 21st century, with September 11, and I need not say more, and how it affected the travel and tourism industry. Then we went into hurricanes, tsunamis, pandemics, avian flu. And then, towards the end of the year, we had one of the most serious economic crises that mankind has seen since World War I. And the decade did not end before delivering to us one of the most serious transformation in the Middle East and North Africa that has upset the entire geopolitical balance there. And of course, it had an impact on our lives, our economy, and on travel and tourism in a very, very significant way. In the last 24 years, there were 4 times, and only 4 times, where tourism took a dip. Otherwise, it was going in a steady move up at an average of 4 to 4.4 growth every year. The first was in 1991, the impact of the first economic recession. The second in 2001, with September 11. The third was in 2003, with the SARS. And the last, of course, was with the economic crisis in 2009, where we took a dip. In all 4 occasions, it was a 1-year dip. Immediately the year after that, things started to go back to normal. In the last economic crisis, when we had this dip in 2009 of minus 4%, the year after, immediately in 2009, we were up 7%, and in 2011, we were up again 4.4%. And we're expecting 3 to 4% again gains, barring any unforeseeable circumstance in 2012. So it is definitely a story of withholding, coming back in a very resilient and an extremely impressive manner, because the need to travel is irreversible, because it has become culturally ingrained in the way of life of people nowadays. It is no more just the privilege of the elites or of certain societies. Everybody feels they have a right to travel, and they're exercising that in different ways, by different means, but it's not going to stop. And it is going to be, it will continue to be a human activity that is going to be cherished by everybody and promoted by everybody. It is clear that tourism is vulnerable to crisis, therefore. It is also proven that tourism is a resilient sector with a strong capacity to rebound. Yet, the consequences of reduced tourism numbers, even for a short period of time, have very negative impacts on the destinations. Conclusion, we must prepare ourselves for crisis. They are not going to stop. As long as there is human activity, as long as life goes on, we will always have earthquakes, tsunamis, conflicts, terrorist attacks, health pandemics. We need to definitely learn from the lessons and prepare ourselves better for the next crisis. GW, all the other educational institutions must therefore take risk and crisis management as an area and as a discipline that must be always an integral part of how we study tourism and how we prepare ourselves for the story of tourism to keep becoming a story of success that we take pride in. 2, the emergence of new markets and new destinations has definitely been a characteristic in the last 10 to 24 years, if we're talking about the 24 years. The world, the geopolitics, the center of gravity of the world is moving east and moving south, for sure. And of course, this shift in power to east and south, in economic terms, in political terms, has impacted tourism, and tourism has followed the same trend, very naturally. The rise in power of China, of Russia, of India, of Brazil has manifested itself in incredibly impressive growth in inbound and outbound tourism in these countries that I have just said. These are the new stars. 52% was the growth of outbound tourism in Brazil last year. 52%. 28% China, 27% Russia, 21% India. These are the markets that are really the reservoirs of the tourists of the future. In 1988, if we're looking at 1988 as our reference year, 24 years ago, emerging economies had only 30% of the share of the market. 70% was the share of the developed, the mature economies of Europe and North America. Today, the share of the emerging economies is 48%, 2 points short of a 50-50. We believe our studies, our recent tourism towards 2030, which looks at 20 years ahead, it's a strategic document that was released last October. It took 2.5 years to produce, is forecasting that in the year 2015, the world will equalize itself between developed and developing destinations, and we will be 50-50. By the year 2030, it will even be tipped. It will be 58% in favor of emerging destinations versus 48% in terms of the mature destinations. And the emerging destinations would grow at double the pace of the advanced ones. While we are forecasting that 30 million tourists will be added to the stock every year of the emerging destinations, there will be 14 million added more to the mature destinations. That means that the cake is going to continue to be bigger, because we have about 42 million will be added every year in the coming 20 years, but the share of the market is going to be different. This is a trend that is also likely to continue, and therefore, again, GW, all institutions must prepare themselves to better understand the trends and everything that is surrounding the future trends of these emerging destinations. And the lessons learned here is look east, look south, but don't forget the north. It will continue to be the solid reservoir, and we must never overlook that. Still today, more than 52% of world tourists come out of Europe and come into Europe. But we must acknowledge the new reality. The third element of change is sustainability. We were talking about sustainability this morning with your president, President Nam. And we talked about the importance of sustainability at all levels. And we're not here talking only about the environmental element here. We're talking about all aspects of sustainability, the triple bottom effect, as they call it, social, economic, and environmental sustainability. We have with us the previous Minister of Environment, and she understands that very well. She combined the portfolio of environment and that of tourism. And it was not really until the early 90s, particularly with the Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro in 1992, that the concept of sustainable tourism development was fully acknowledged and introduced in a rather comprehensive way. In 1995, sustainable tourism was defined as follows, and let me read to you. It is one that meets, I quote, one that meets the needs of present tourists and of host regions while protecting and promoting opportunities for the future. Not a very refined definition, but one that gives us a good start to go ahead. In 2002 in Johannesburg, in the second development summit, the tourism was emphasized for the first time as an important element in sustainable development worldwide. And it stressed three very important elements. The importance of sustainable tourism for 1, poverty alleviation, 2, protection of the environment, 3, cultural heritage preservation. It was the first time that travel and tourism was connected to the development agenda. It was not seen like this before. Travel and tourism was seen as a luxury activity on the periphery of the core of the human life. Now, travel and tourism means developments, means jobs, means trade, means infrastructure. It is in the core of the development agenda. In the Rio Summit in 1992, and most particularly in 2002, in the Johannesburg Summit, significant progress has been made in a number of areas, particularly the environmental sustainability, climate change, social inclusion, gender equality. Much still needs to be achieved, but at least for the first time there was an acknowledgement that this is part of the tourism agenda. Let me, before concluding on this item and moving to the next one, say that it is very important for us to keep in mind that recent economic crisis and other similar crises, financial, economic crisis, food, energy, have highlighted many of the failures of the development model of the last 50, 60 years. Many experts and many concerned people are looking and say, where did we go wrong? Why did we reach this point? These are not accidents of history. The fact that we have an economic crisis, a financial crisis, cross and coinciding with an environmental calamity, what many of us can call also an environmental crisis, global warming and all the associated other environmental issues, is not an act of accidents. Actually, there are two faces to the same coin. They're one crisis. It's the way we're approaching our development model. We have consumed our environment just as we have consumed our financial assets. And this is the only way we should be looking at these two faces of this calamity that we have reached, and the reason why we need to re-examine our development models. 3 years ago, the United Nations introduced this concept of the green economy as a response to the failure of the proclaimed model of development of the last 50, 60 years. It is a model that aims at a transformation to address a multiple-faceted crisis. The concept of the green economy is defined as such, and I want to quote, one that results in improved human well-being and social equity while significantly reducing environmental risks and ecological scarcities. This indeed emerged as a response to the crisis that the multiple crises that the world is facing. The green economy as a concept, and I advise you really to revisit it in light of what we are up against now, to present an alternative paradigm to the way we are living in this world and the way we're behaving with our resources. It offers opportunities for growth while protecting our ecosystem and contributing to poverty alleviation at the same time. And it emphasizes that the crucial point that economic growth and environmental concern can and should be complementary, and should never be seen as a trade-off between one and another. We should never put ourselves in a position to say that better environmental responsibilities means limiting our growth. We want to grow, we want to increase the benefits of people around the earth, and we want to do that in a responsible way. And there is no trade-off here. They are one and the same. Tourism as a labor-intensive sector, creating hundreds of millions of jobs. 1 over 12 jobs all over the world are created by the travel and tourism industry worldwide, can be a very important sector in this transformation towards the green economy. As a matter of fact, for the first time in the document of the green economy, tourism has a full chapter there in an acknowledgement of its role. And we're very proud to claim that UNWTO has some credit to be given in trying to introduce this agenda on the global scene. This has no doubt been a major shift in the paradigm in our sector, and it's an area as well, in conclusion, that we need as an academic community to put more emphasis on and to understand how is it that we can contribute to this transformation process and this